Okay, good morning, everyone. It is November 11th, Veterans Day, 2022. And today we're having an event. It's sponsored by the STEM Success Collaborative. It's a Developing Hispanic Serving Institutions Title V grant here at City Tech that probably most of you have heard about. The project is, in a nutshell, is focused on collaboration, as the name says, in the various areas of the college to try to understand what we are doing and find the overlaps and the gaps and improve communications and work together to make the most of our limited resources here. We're working in 3 different areas around student support, academic support, and institutional resources. And on the student support side, a group of us have been meeting over the last year dealing with various issues, some of them involving, coming back to campus and supporting students through this difficult period of time. Also, as you probably know, there's been some rearrangements in what's going on in student affairs and collaborations between student affairs and academic affairs. So a group of us, Lori Aguirre, Dory Clay, Marlene Sohn, Kim Cardassia, Caroline Hellman, the president's office. More recently, Sarah Perullo, who's taken over for the Student Success Center, which is a position supported by the grant project. And also Aura Schiflinger have been meeting over the year and talking about ways that we can work together to improve student support. And this is just a continuation of other efforts that we've had at the college, the Student Ready College and academic momentum and so forth. So it's just another aspect of that. But one of the things that we've talked a lot about is this model that we've come across at University of Texas, Austin, and many other colleges have followed some similar similar models. At UTAustin, it's called 360 Connections, and Dean Mix, Patty Moran Mix, is here from the University of Texas, Austin to talk to us about that program, how it got started, challenges, changes along the way, how they're running it now. But the bottom line there is that I believe every incoming student at University of Texas, Austin gets placed into some sort of a cohort program where a small group of students, about 20 students, and I think many of them have peer mentors, and then of course a staff or faculty, certain types of activities, certain types of support, college readiness, and so forth are part of those groups. But what was so interesting is that those cohorts are very, very different. There's all sorts of different programs. So it's not coming to a college and saying everybody has to do X, but looking at what already exists, seeing how things can be tweaked and tied together. And also, of course, the process of getting every student into something that aligns with their interests, their major, their needs, et cetera. So it seemed like an interesting model. And I've come across it a number of times, don't even remember now where exactly, in research and accolades in various places. And so I've had it on my radar for a long time to find someone at UTAustin to come talk to us, and finally found the right person, I'm sure. So with all of that, on our agenda, Dean Mix will speak for about 45 minutes or so, and then we'll have a chance for some questions. And then I've asked a number of folks, sort of selected programs here at City Tech, to talk very briefly, just a few minutes, so we have time for a conversation about the programs we have here at City Tech. And so we have some context here. And the big question of the day, I think, is, what is a cohort program? What are the components that make it work? And what are the challenges? So with all of that, Patty, I'll have you introduce yourself a little more. And
Sure. And I'm going to share my screen
so much for being here with us. Yeah.
Oh, let's see if that's working. Okay, can you all see that okay and hear me all right? Yes. We're all good? Okay, excellent. And I'll be trying to keep an eye on the chat as well on my other screen in case any burning questions come up. But again, I'm happy to talk with you more as we go on. So I wanted to thank Shelley for inviting me to speak. I think it's wonderful when we have the opportunity to learn from each other. As you know, we're all trying to do the same thing, which is support students while they are at our schools and colleges. And how we do that might differ a little bit, but I think we all have that same mission, which is very important. So I was mentioning that my name is Patty Moran Mix. I use she, her pronouns. I am originally a Jersey girl, grew up in Central Jersey, and was mentioning how I miss the change of seasons. I don't know that I miss the snow on Tuesday so much that you're all going to get, but the summers here in Austin, Texas they're long and very, very warm. So I definitely miss the Northeast there. So it was really great to speak with you today. So what I'd like to do today, and in trying to organize how I was going to speak about this, was just give you some overview of UT Austin and how we are structured for our first year experience office and team. Give you some just very brief history of sort of how the university started going in this direction, explain what a 360 connection is, at least how we define it. And then, as Shelley said, is go back and talk about how did we actually come up with how we define it, or what counts as something, or how do we get all the students in? And then, of course, looking back at some of the challenges, some of the successes, and looking very briefly, and I'm interested in learning more about your programs as well, is that this does seem like a really good fit for your campus because, again, you already have many pieces in place. It's just having that, maybe that infrastructure to bring it all together. So I hope that's what I can share with you today. And again, happy to answer questions either as we go or at the end, whatever y'all think works best. That sound good? Thumbs up. All right, good. So as you know, UT Austin is a big place, right? So we have lots of students. These are just quick facts from fall 2021. They're still working on the fall 22 final numbers, but there are a lot of students. There are about 51,000 students, about 40,000 of those are undergraduates. So it is the flagship university of Texas. It is part of a UT system. So there's UT San Antonio, UT Dallas, UT El Paso, but UT Austin is considered, when people say, I went to UT, if they don't say at Austin, this is where they've gone. So again, it's a very, very large school. And that is both an opportunity and a challenge, right? As to how to bring thousands of students together. Overall, our first year class is between 10 and 11,000 entering every year. That's about, on average, 8,500 or so first time in college students. And then the remainder of that made up with transfer students. So it is a large class. Again, all of our programs that serve all of these students didn't start out this large and have built over time, as you all are saying too, is it does take time to sort of almost phase in some of these ideas so that they are manageable. So our first year experience in FYE really thinks about how do we support students in all of the way that they're transitioning from high school to college, right? So our FYE is a little bit different than some others nationally in that we live in academic affairs. So we are in the School of Undergraduate Studies. So while we live in a school with a dean who reports to a provost, we do not grant degrees and we do not appoint our own faculty. However, we serve every student at UT Austin, and we work with over 200 faculty members to teach our signature courses, which are our introduction to academics and college learning. But really what we think about when we think about our FYE is how do we provide programming that is correlated to best practices? You know, so research shows, right, involvement in peer groups, making connections, right, with faculty, with staff members, knowing where there are resources and how to access those resources are important things. We found at UT Austin, we have a project, it's informally known as the Leavers Project, where students who have left UT Austin in good standing are followed up with by a member of a team over here to find out why they left in good standing. Were they going to go to another school? Was there a reason that they, disliked UTAustin? Were there, other non-academic issues? And by and large, the students who leave in good standing leave because they say they didn't feel connected to our school or our campus. So we're definitely serving a need there in making sure that we are also combating one of maybe the main reasons that students who do leave in good standing actually leave, because they don't feel they're connected to anyone. So this is also helping to remedy that. I tell parents often when I speak with them at first year orientation is that, again, the university size is sort of, people say it's a blessing and a curse. There are a lot of things going on, and that's great. And there are a lot of things going on, and that is challenging for students trying to manage that. So with 360 Connections, we actually know by student what connections they're in and whatnot. So I think that also helps with working with parents who are, dropping their students off. Is someone going to, keep track of them? Is someone? Yes, we've got them, right? Is important. And our FYE, we collaborate with all the other schools and colleges. So our programs only work because we work with all the other schools and colleges, because we don't have our own group of students. These programs are not only for School of Undergraduate Studies people, they are for students across the university. So we sort of serve as, I call it, sort of the central administration for a lot of our first year programming at UTAustin. I mentioned earlier, this is just some sort of average scope and scale of our FYE. We have signature courses, again, which are our sort of intro to academic learning, learning how to learn, critical thinking, those types of things. And every student in their first year is required to take one of those. They're taught by faculty who select the topics. So there are 220 different topics taught by 220 faculty from all the schools and colleges. First year interest groups, or FIGs. I'm not sure if y'all have a model like this, but that's the typical learning community, a small cohort. They take a cluster of classes together. They have a weekly meeting. Ours are called FIGs. On some other campuses, they're called different things. And that is, when we get to it, that is the model for 360 Connections. That's what we based what should a connection look like off of FIGs. Again, 360 Connections. We also have a transfer year experience that's part of the first year experience to parallel services for new transfer students who are often sort of forgotten about when we're going to talk about all of these things about increasing four-year graduation rates and increasing student retention, increasing student success. At UTAustin, we are defining that by first time in college students, not by transfer students. So there's a huge push on our campus to provide transfer students with the same level of resources and support that we give to our first time in college students. And then we also run a university-wide lecture series at our concert hall each fall for our first year students to showcase some of our faculty to them. So that's a little bit about us. How did we get to 360 Connections? So it started, again, as you'll see, 20 years ago, really. And I'm going to age myself here and say, I've been here since 1999 and been involved in what was sort of the precursors to where we are now all along. So what I love about this is that I have sort of this institutional knowledge of how things went and did it really work or did it not? So I think that's really beneficial for my team and of course for those that I speak to across the country. So in 2002, there was something called the Commission of 125. Every 25 years, UTAustin has a commission of 100, 125, soon to be 150. And that's a convening of probably 100 different people. They are business people, students, faculty, healthcare, nonprofits, and they all get together and talk about what should UTAustin look like for the next 25 years. So one of those recommendations was to actually create the School of Undergraduate Studies, which is where I work right now. So to be, sort of we say, to be the college that other colleges can't be, because we are really an administrative college, which when you're thinking about how to run something that is cross campus and cross departments and cross colleges, it helps to have this, I guess, non-biased sort of like third party entity. That's one of the reasons that our programs work, is because we are not in a specific College of Natural Sciences, College of Liberal Arts, School of Social Work situation. And then you'll see through the years that there were many task force, a first, a second, another one on enrollment strategy. So one of the challenges at UT-Austin is if we want our students to graduate, they had to be able to get the courses that they need. We need to not have bottlenecks, right? So sometimes students are delayed in graduating because they simply can't get into the classes that they need. So there was a huge push on campus to work to make sure that, freshman level courses are saved for students coming in for orientation, and that stepped courses, mostly in the STEM fields, were available for the cohort coming in, right? So it's fine if you have, selected seats in certain courses, but you have to have enough for how many majors you're serving if you're going to tell these students that they have to take this course and it's only taught once a year, right? We are by design sometimes delaying their graduation and their progress towards degree. In 2011, there was another task force on graduation rates. It really focused on enrollment management efforts. How many students are we accepting at UT? What schools and colleges will they be placed into? What majors are available? What classes, and so forth. Then in 2011, then University President Bill Powers, who was former dean of the UT Law School, made a declaration that we were going to increase our graduation rate for the entering class of 2016 to 70%. So at the time that President Powers said this, you can see that our graduation rate was 51%. So in 5 years, we were tasked with increasing our 4-year graduation rate by almost 20%, which is a huge ask. And we have done it, and barely. You'll see later, 69.9% of students have graduated. So get a couple more in there and we're at 70. But so that was what really, I think, was the catalyst for 360 Connections, for this push. Right, in 2012, Dr. David Laudy, who you may have heard of or have seen speak, he was appointed as Senior Vice Provost for Enrollment and Graduation Management. He was called the 4-year graduation champion, was his side gig, I guess, is his superhero name. So I also think that's important, is that you have to have someone who is leading this charge, and it doesn't have to be necessarily a new position. He's a chemistry professor, but has worked with different types of student affairs and student success programs throughout his tenure at UT-Austin. And then a year later, Dr. Laudy came to me, and we talked about what would it look like for someone to be for every student to be in some sort of small learning community. What would that look like? Who should we meet with? So he and I really developed this committee, this brainstorming committee of what would it look like. And we were also able to hire a program coordinator to take on the building of this program, because, for as many students that we serve, we have, including myself, 8 team members right now. But for the most part, that's very recent. We've had about 5 or 6. So we just did not have the bandwidth to take on an additional campus-wide initiative. But with taking that on came funding for a new position that would report to our office. So again, the motivation behind why 360 Connections, right? So if we want to ensure students have the opportunity and the support to complete their undergraduate degree in 4 years, we have to make that support essential, right? So at UT-Austin, we refer often to this constitutional mandate that UT-Austin was meant to serve as a university of the first class for the people of Texas. So if we're having students come here, pay tuition, and not be able to earn a degree because of logistics or support services that aren't there, then we need to address that for our students. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what is a connection, right? How do we define it here at UT-Austin? And really, 360 Connections is the again, that's the name of the initiative, right? I sort of think about that as the umbrella name. They're really learning communities, right? And I'll talk a little bit later about, we're thinking about changing the name of that, because outside of UTAustin, 360 Connections doesn't really mean anything, but people like ourselves know that those are learning communities, right? So it's a small cohort of students who meet regularly. They have either a common major or a goal or a theme. They are throughout the university, and we'll talk about what those are. And again, it was based on our FIG model, right? So they could be a cohort, they could be in a FIG, an already existing program, that counts as a connection. They might be in an honors program, which is small, that counts as a connection. They might be student athletes who are their own, right, small group, or UTAustin larger group, but small, right? You break those down. Those are a connection. It could be, we also have student success programs in each school and college, which work primarily with students who are coming from low SES backgrounds, who are Pell eligible, first gen students, right, are given extra support in the schools and colleges. That also counts as their community. So what's important is that some students are in more than one, right? Because you could be in a FIG and a success program and some other, a small group that already exists on campus, right? Our goal was that all students would be required, and I'll talk about whether we can actually enforce this, which we can't, in at least one, right? So the way that I see it is that we are giving every student an opportunity to be in a small learning community. We don't hit 100%, and I don't imagine we ever will, but I can talk to you later about what are some of these outliers that they might not be in a connection. And again, and some students are in 4 or 5, right? It just sort of depends on what college they're in, what programs they're in, etc. I'm going to see if this works, and you let me know if you can hear it. It's a very short, like 1-minute video that we show at summer orientation for students and parents. And just give me a thumbs up if you can hear that once it starts.
I was so afraid of being alone and like not making friends. That was like the worst thing ever.
With so much going on, so many activities, so many clubs, and just so many people, there was a lot for me to take in.
Am I going to be able to get the same grades that I got in high school?
As an incoming freshman, you can probably relate. Don't worry, at UT, 360 Connections ensure that every first-year student has a campus community that brings the Longhorn experience full circle. Connections are made up of about 20 students who typically meet once a week. You'll have familiar and friendly faces in your classes on day 1. At new student orientation, you'll learn which 360 connections are available to you.
My FIG really helped me make friends because everyone in my FIG was usually people that were in my classes.
I think a 360 connection really narrows down what you're interested in and will really connect you with other students.
My connection shaped my UT experience because it gave me a very unique perspective about the school whenever I first entered in my first semester. It was very helpful in integrating me into the culture of not only campus, but also student life.
Okay, so now we're going to look back and I'm going to sort of give you my advice and my experience. And here are the questions you should be thinking about when you're thinking about starting a program like, or initiative like 360 Connections. So again, back in 2012, 2013, when we were thinking about what should it look like, one thing to think about is how many students do you have to serve? What is your total student population? And then based on that, about how many cohorts do you need? And actually, that's where the 360 Connections name comes in. Early on, we were calling ourselves, like we're going to meet with a 300 group. And that was we probably need about 300 cohorts or students. And then it became 360. And then unbeknownst to us, our marketing department decided to run with that and make it like a 360, full Longhorn life there. It's great. And we have lots of things that say 360 Connections, but we need to sort of rebrand. And that's one of our future goals. But you really have to think about what is needed. And then, as was mentioned earlier, the next one, do you already have things that are working? So what's really important to think about when we were thinking about designing 360 Connections is that 360 Connections itself is not a program. It is an initiative in which many other programs are connected. So we would not have the capacity or the bandwidth or the funding to start programming for 10,000 students every year, right? So we had an inventory. What already exists on campus? How many students does that serve? Where are our gaps? Are there big pockets of students who, or schools or colleges who don't offer anything? How can we reach out to them and talk with them about, right? How do you scale up? One of the ways that happened on our campus is that many of the schools and colleges, when they were told, hey, you're going to have every one of your students has to be offered this opportunity, most of the schools and colleges said, okay, we'll just have more FIGs. Thank you. And then in 1 year, my office had to double from about 150 FIG groups, FIG cohorts, to over 300 in a year, because we had to figure out, okay, well, how do we scale that up, right? So there's some, logistics behind that of how you do it. What also comes into play, right, and this was mentioned before as well, how do you maximize the resources? So those are financial resources, right? So we did get some money. I'm going to tell you, it's not enough, right? So you have to really be creative in using what's already there, not just financially, but also when you think about your human resources. Are we going to ask staff members, advisors, right, are primarily who lead our cohorts of students? Are we going to burden them, right, they're already, right, overworked, underpaid, right? And so how do we make sure that we're also not just adding something else to their plate and saying, well, now you have to do this too, and we're not going to give you more money for that, right? So really thinking about creative ways to get others involved. So we have staff members who work in admissions or the registrar's office, my team, other units that maybe don't directly work with students, let's say in an advising capacity, but they're still part of student success on campus, right? So really sort of thinking outside the box on who can you get to help support your efforts. How do you define a connection? And we're going to talk in a minute about what those elements are. You need to determine how you define that, right? Because that is how you're going to sort of sell this to other people. You're going to say, you're already doing this, or if you add in this one thing, you're considered a 360 connection, right? Where does the program live? So I mentioned earlier that one of the reasons that it worked at UTAustin is because we are not tied to a specific school or college. As you probably can imagine, what happens in that case is, oh, if I'm in liberal arts, well, liberal arts, they're getting priority on this and they're getting all the funding and their students have this, but this school doesn't, right? So we are, right, we were sort of like I say, sort of like the third party, the go-between of funding and staffing and things like that. We help coordinate this initiative, right, which is both a positive and a challenge. And then how do you convey this information? One of our challenges was that we found out in April of 2013 that all the students who are coming to orientation starting in June will need to know about 360 Connections, and you better have enough for them to go around for these 8,000 students who are about to come through the door. So that was a huge challenge. It took a lot of meetings and information sent out and collaboration across the schools and colleges. How do we let families know? How do we let incoming students know? How do we brand it? All of these things for us happened very quickly. We, joke that, we are building the plane as we are flying it. For sure, we were doing that for quite some time in starting this. I think you also have to think about the why a 360 connection, or what do you want students to get out of it? If you're going to tell students they are going to be part of this, and they say to you, well, why? What do I get from being in that? You need to be ready to say, not just because you have to, or it's a great thing. And right, these are what we decided, right, is that you get this community building experiences, you are exposed to campus resources, both going there and having members of those different offices coming to your group, outside speakers. Again, it was mentioned that all of our programs have some sort of peer mentoring. And at least for our FIG program, we require that peer mentors meet one-on-one with every student in their group throughout the semester to make that connection even stronger. And in FIGs and some other programs, we do what we call clustering courses. So we link courses together. So for an example, a student in a natural sciences FIG might have a biology class that they need, a chemistry class that they need, and a signature course, because all first-year students need that. So they'll have those 3 courses and their FIG seminar all tied together. So when they register, they use one number, and then that populates their schedule. There's still other things that they choose. They'll still need 1 or 2 more classes. But the idea is that every student in that cohort of 20 students has that exact same schedule of biology, chemistry, signature course. So when you're in a very large class, like our chemistry classes here can be 500 students for like the intro to chemistry class, they're automatically going to know 20 other students, right? So again, it's about making the campus feel smaller from the first day. So let me talk to you a few minutes about our essential elements. So when you're designing this, one thing that Dr. Laudy and I talked about a lot, and I appreciated him asking, because I think sometimes leadership doesn't actually ask the experts, like this is what we do, right? What do students need? What should it look like? So I appreciated that he said, I need you to tell me, what does it need to look like? And what do these, when we talk about the shared experiences, need to be, right? So we talked about small size, meeting regularly, interaction with different members of the university community. So that's faculty, staff, peer mentors, right? Curriculum is a little bit too of a structured word, but really, again, is there a topic or a theme? It might be that all of these students are in, government majors, or all of these students want to transfer to the business school, or all of these students are in an honors program. There's something that connects these students together in a logical fashion, that they're not just haphazardly placed into something with random other students that they might not have a shared goal with. And then shared experiences. So the shared experiences, to me, are what make 360 connections what they are. And I will say they're also probably the most challenging thing to track or assess. And I'll talk about why in a minute. But when Dr. Laudy and I were first talking about what should 360 connections look like, he said, what are the 4 or 5 things that you think every first-year student should experience? Because part of the challenge on a campus our size was that some groups were doing this wonderfully. They were doing all of these things and more, and other groups weren't, right? And there was no sort of overarching structure for that. So I developed these shared experiences. I will say when they first started, they were called theme weeks. And I joked to Dr. Laudy that I don't think we can do something like, connect with faculty all in the same week. He insisted that we could. So we tried it, try to get, hundreds of faculty members to come visit different student groups all in the same week. It's almost impossible, right? Or have all of, university health services present to 300 different groups or 500 different groups, right? So now they are shared experiences so that we hope they happen during the semester. So the 5 that I developed are things we were already doing in our FIG learning communities, but connection with faculty is very, very important for new students, right? I use the example that when my kids were younger and they would see their teacher in the grocery store, right? They're all surprised. They're like, they're buying groceries. And you're like, yeah, they're just people, they need to eat. But because they only know them as their teacher and that context, the teachers live at the school, right? They don't actually leave and have families. Well, it's the same thing with college students and faculty. How do they see them? Usually standing at the front of a lecture hall. So that is how they have an association with them. They don't see them as, I'm a person and I walk my dog and I have, these other hobbies. So having a faculty member actually come to the small group, not the students go to the faculty. One of the things we say is you're not allowed to talk about the class. When the faculty comes, it's not a exam prep. It's just learning about the faculty member. Where did you go to college? What did you think you wanted to do? How did you get to where you are? What's your favorite movie? Right? If you can break down that barrier, they are, as we know, much more likely to actually go to office hours and ask questions and do the things academically that we want them to do. We have live as a Longhorn, right? So these are things like volunteer and service learning, counseling and mental health services, Integrity Week, student orgs, right? How do you define yourselves as a UT Longhorn? And then we also learn as a Longhorn, right? So how do you work with tutoring services? How do you develop a growth mindset? How do you have, time management best practices, right? So how do you, again, engage in the university that has all of these resources for you to help you become a college scholar? We also have foster inclusivity, which we want students and those small groups to, again, not necessarily, here's 1 week and we're going to talk about diversity and inclusion, and that's going to be it, is to embed these, right, into the things that you're already doing, right? And again, this is obviously a push as well with faculty members in their courses, right? And then finding your path. So helping students explore what they want to do, what they think they want to do, what they know they don't want to do, but they're doing because their parents said they had to do. How do you go and speak to advisors about different options? How do you, if you're happy with your major, how do you think about a career, or how do you think about the career that you want and then work backwards on how to get there, right? So to me, these shared experiences are something we say all first time in college students in their first semester should be doing these 5 things in some way, right? So there's lots of ways they can do them. So that I would say sort of is the first piece of how do we build 360 connections. And I will say probably for the first 4 or 5 years, those were building years. Those were figuring out what we wanted, what the shared experiences are, how to communicate them. So I always call that like 360 Connections 1.0. That was just, that was the program coordinator's job, was to build that, was to track it. So we have a student programs database is how we track all of the connections, right? So if I am leading an honors program on this database, I dump in my roster. Here's a list of my students. And then that is matched against all first time in college students. And that's how we know who's in what connection and how many are not in a connection as well. So once we got that up and running, that's now this well-oiled machine. It didn't really warrant a full-time person managing it and getting it up and running anymore because it was up and running and it's going. So I really think about once we sort of got after that first 5 years, version 2.0, how else can we continue to support connections on campus and not just necessarily students connecting with each other, but how do we help what we call facilitators, who are our staff members who help facilitate these small groups? How do we help them have some more professional development? On our campus, at least, if you are an academic advisor, it is assumed that you know how to run a small group of students, you know how to do all this, and not necessarily so, right? So how do we provide them different resources and tools? And we started having a half-day conference with topics that were broad enough that they were things about like how to mentor your mentor, how to facilitate group discussion, right? To actually give them tools that would help them be better working with these students, right? Can we have some brown bag speaker series? And that could be a faculty member or another member from a group talking about something they've done that works. We've had them on growth mindset. We've had them on emotional wellness. And also, especially for facilitators during the pandemic, again, how do we help them take care of themselves while they're trying to take care of many, many students? So these are just some screenshots from our website. Right now, I think you have to have like a UT ID to log into these. So that's why I just made them some screenshots for right now. But this is, we use Canvas. I'm not sure if you all use Canvas. on your, or it's like Blackboard. So it's our like course management system. So we created a course called 360 Connections Facilitators. And then all of our staff members can join it. And then they have access to all of these documents. So when we say, we want you to figure out how to connect with faculty, we want you to present on how to learn as a Longhorn, I think it is our responsibility to give them some ideas of how to do that, right? Some guidelines, some prep. So what we've done, is, I know this is hard to read, but it was just to give you an example, is we actually came up with lesson plans or guidelines for our facilitators. If we want you to make sure that you are hitting the shared experience on living as a learning as a Longhorn, what does that mean? What are some ways that you can do that, right? So here's different resources like our Learning Center or the Writing Center, or visiting TA hours and working with your graduate student TAs. It talks about the goals, it talks about the experience. So what we're trying to do is also, again, not necessarily recreate the wheel, but give the people who are managing these groups the tools that they need to do that successfully. You'll also see that any type of presentation or talk that we've had, we have up there, right? From our different sessions that we've had, either during conferences that we've run or these sort of brown bag experiences. And then again, some other just online learning communities that our staff could join if they would want to, especially during the pandemic. So lastly, I want to talk a little bit about the outcomes and then challenges and successes in the last few moments here. So you'll see that 360 Connections was part of a campus-wide move to increase graduation rates. So sometimes it's hard to say how effective it was because it was one of 20 different programs that started that year. So in 2013, the campus just exploded with programs and offices and services to help students graduate in 4 years. So 360 Connections was one of those ideas. So it's hard to, tease it out and say this, happened because of this, but it was definitely part of the equation, right? So the 360 Connections, the blue line, right? The reason that there are some 360 Connections before 2013 is we were counting FIGs, because that's what we ran and we based the 360 Connections model off of. But you can see how that spiked way up of almost 100% of the students are in it. And that graduation rates did slowly rise over time. And I'll have another chart in a minute to show you. But just to show you the difference from fall 2013 to fall 2021, which is the latest data that we have, you'll see that we also admit a lot more students now, which becomes challenging because there's not extra funding for that. But you'll see that, again, 95%, 93%, where I don't ever expect that we're going to hit 100% of students participating. And we grab all of this data after our 12th class day. So at UTAustin, the 12th class day is the snapshot of the official enrollment, who's in what college, how many seats are taken. So we have to wait a little bit into the semester. We usually wait until after the 20th class day to pull this data, but pretty good numbers. And they generally match our first to second semester retention numbers, and first year to second year numbers are in the mid to high 90s as well. This chart I thought was so interesting. I wanted to share it with you because I did mention the transfer students, and not knowing enough about your university, I'm not sure if transfer students fit into this vision or not. So while we have services for transfer students, they aren't, as I mentioned, they aren't sort of mandated in the same way that they are for first time in college. But you'll see that in 2013, the green line, right, UT sets this goal for 70% first time in college 4-year graduation rate. Well, we're at 69.9 in 2019, and we've eventually hit it since then. But you'll also see that we established the TYE, the transfer year experience, in 2015, and since then transfer graduation rates have also gone up. So we're thinking about how do we close that gap by offering more similar opportunities to transfer students, because at UTAustin, when transfer students are admitted, They are not eligible for any honors programs, any student support programs that provide financial assistance or Pell eligible students. They are more likely to be in a lower socioeconomic class. They are more likely to have dependents. They are more likely to go part-time, right? So they're more likely to have financial need, yet they are not eligible for any cross-campus program that serves students who have financial need, right? So it's sort of that, to us, that needs work, and we're getting there slowly, but I think that's important too, is to think about, do you have non-traditional students? Do you have, right, 1 in every 4 of our UT-Austin graduates is a transfer student or a non-traditional student as a subset of that. So looking back, what worked, what didn't, what would I do differently if I could go back? So some of the successes, the wins, are that our first year experience in our School of Undergraduate Studies are specifically positioned to run campus-wide initiatives. And I think that's important. Before there was a School of Undergraduate Studies, programs like this were out of the provost's office. So it's got to be sort of this, I would say, sort of independent area or some other place on your campus that is not specifically linked to a discipline or a school or a college, right? One of the major challenges that we're still finding that we're in is how to assess program goals in areas that are not under our portfolio. So we have lots of information about sense of belonging for students in FIGs, or their academic self-efficacy, or do they have a growth mindset? Because we manage the FIGs and we, hire all the mentors and we do all the training and we organize all of that, we can assess that. But for all of these other programs that are 360 connections that we don't directly oversee, we don't want to necessarily say, hey, can you do this other assessment for us? Because these students are getting oversurveyed as it is, right? So we're finding ways to, what are our core questions that we want to know? We want to know, do students have a sense of belonging and something else? Because in these other groups, they are probably also doing assessment of their students. So can you share these pieces with us so that we can say, across campus, the information that we received is that students are self-reporting, 90% of them feel like they have, a place on campus or something like that. So again, roughly 50% of the students who are first-time in college students right now are in a FIG, right? So again, we oversee that program. But what that means is the other 50% of the students, or 4,000 or 5,000 of them, there's not incentives for those groups to participate fully. I can say, you need to do all these shared experiences, and they could say, okay. And I don't think they're purposely not doing them, but how do I manage whether or not they're checking off these boxes? So again, we have some ideas of how to work with colleges and programs to do that. FYE, Dr. Laudy approached me because we were sort of already doing this, right? But on a smaller scale with first year interest groups. So we have the infrastructure, we had a model in place. A challenge can be that sometimes other schools and colleges want to do their own thing. They don't want, they see it as like, oh, the university is adding all this stuff for us to do, right? So that becomes challenging of how to find this common ground, right? And that's what those shared experiences are, right? How do you find things that no matter what program or school or college your students are in, they need to know these things and probably a lot of other things about your school or college or their major or their field, but at the sort of the essence of what it means to be a first time in college student, here's the things that you need to do. One of the successes is that we got what we called the 5-year money. So the state legislature gave UT-Austin, because we're the state school, funding for 5 years to get this graduation rate program off the ground, which was great, but that ended after 5 years and the programs are still going on. So one of the challenges is, how are we running programs? So we in the School of Undergraduate Studies right now are paying for a lot of this programming because they're not giving us money anymore, but we have to find that money, right? And so again, now we're working sort of in other ways of thinking about how do we, again, use what we have, how do we leverage things that are already happening. Our university, our School of Undergraduate Studies recently, last year, merged with all of the programs that were under our enrollment management. So admissions and financial aid and registrar and student success programs. So now we are one big unit. The good thing is that a lot of the money that we were getting came from student success initiatives, and now they are all part of our group. So we're hoping that gives us some more stability instead of every year wondering if we're going to have funding to support these programs. So while we knew from day one, this is 5-year money, and after 5 years, I can't guarantee that you're going to get it, or I can't guarantee you're going to have a salary, or I can't guarantee, that was all in writing everywhere. I don't think anyone really expected that it would stop, like actually just stop, that we couldn't request anymore, but that funding stopped. And then we had to think about ways to build into the schools and colleges, these programmings. And here, again, just trying to be silly, but one of the successes is that we got a lot of buy-in from advisors and student affairs professionals. And another challenge is that you have to get buy-in from advisors and student affairs professionals. And I come from an academic advising background, so I do understand that lots of people have these great ideas and you're going to do this and you're going to do that. So a lot of that was this trust building, this, we joke that we called it the road show, right? Like I would have to go to all these different groups, and many of them know me because I've been on campus so long, and this is sort of what I do, right, is work across college. So I think in that sense, that was a plus for me, is because I think people trusted that I wouldn't be trying to sell them something that I didn't think was a good idea, or that I wasn't cognizant of what they already are doing or have to do. But part of the challenge is that the universities, oftentimes we're going to create this new program, and then you're like, isn't that what we're already doing? And now you're just going to call it something else. And I see y'all smiling because everybody does that, right? So that is a definite challenge. So lastly, looking ahead, a couple things that I'm looking into as 360 Connections evolves over these, years. Again, one is, how do we assess student experiences in groups that we don't directly oversee, right? So how do we work in collaboration with schools and colleges? And we were right on the cusp of doing that. And then it was pandemic. And then, you all know, everything just went out the window. So now we're picking that back up again with our assessment director. Again, finding sustainable funding. So again, I'm hopeful that now that we call it the merger, now that we're this one big organization, that resources will be more readily available and shared, because our programming is all coming from the same bucket of money, as we say. I also mentioned that I would love to rebrand 360 Connections. They're learning communities. I think we're going to call them first-year learning communities, maybe. 360 Connections is great, but again, at the national level, that doesn't mean anything to people. And even on campus, I have to explain, why is it 360 Connections and that kind of thing. So I think it's time maybe for a rebrand of that. We right now do peer mentor training through a course about leadership development and professional development for the peer mentors who lead our FIGs and our TRIGs, which are our transfer groups. And there are many other programs on campus that have their own type of training, but I would love to expand that for those who would want that training for their mentors in their different programs and maybe don't have the bandwidth to offer that to their students. And then again, health and well-being as a shared experience. That is right now embedded in Live as a Longhorn, but there's a program on campus that we work with called Shift, which is about shifting the misconceptions maybe of drug and alcohol use and misuse on college campuses, but it's really about health and well-being, right? It's really about giving students what we call protective factors, right? Which are what Connections do. They give them a small community, they give them a point person, they give them resources. So how do we really embed that into what we do? Whew, sorry, I talked a little bit longer, I think, but that was like 10 years of stuff I was trying to do there. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen if I can, there it is. If I can find it, and I would love to hear questions that you might have. And if there's something that I can't answer today, I'm happy to follow up with emails or things like that, just in case I don't have something like data that you might want readily available. You're
Yeah,
all very small on my screen, but if
I
you
see Natalie, I see Natalie.
Okay, there you go.
Has her hand up, yes. Michael?
Okay, sorry, I'm having Zoom lag for some reason. I click the button, nothing happens. Can everyone hear?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. So I'm hoping, thank you, this was really helpful, and I'm familiar with the model, or I worked in a model that was very, very similar to this. But I'm wondering, could you talk a little bit about the anchor course in the cluster? So I'm assuming that there was a shared course that was the first year experience semester course. And could you talk a little bit about what that course was, what the content or topic, and what you crowded into that course? And I use that on purpose because there is a little bit of crowding into that space.
Right. And so I will say that one way that our FYE is structured is that we don't have like a University 101 course. So really that's our FIG seminar. So that is a once a week meeting. Right now it's a 0 credit hour course. So it's on student schedules, but they don't get a grade. They'll eventually, we're moving it to pass fail. No one would really fail it, but so that it stays on the student's transcript. But really that seminar is sort of our University 101. And that's what's led by the peer mentor and the staff facilitator each week with that small group of about 20 students. And I can send you some sample semester outlines and things like that. We think about it in 3 or in thirds, right? So we think about what are all the ways that students transition to college. So it's academically, but it's also developmentally, right? Socially. So if a typical semester is 15 weeks, we want a nice mixture of those pieces, right? Academic, developmental, right? Social. So every day shouldn't be a pizza party, but every day is also not a study session, right? And we work with the mentors in part of our training in how do you provide topics that are timely? If you're going to talk about, let's say, sexual health and wellness, you're probably not doing that in week 2 when nobody really knows each other's names yet, right? Until you build community there. So there are sort of different topics. Some of those shared experiences are worked in there, right? A faculty visit. Most students will visit the Sanger Learning Center, which is our learning commons on campus, or the writing center, and or have someone come to their group about it. We also have a requirement in FIGS that students talk about either the Counseling and Mental Health Center or Mental Health and Wellness. And that was through through legislation of our student senate that asked that we require the discussion about mental health and wellness to first year students, which we were already doing. And when they said we want to mandate it, we said, thank you very much. We would love that too. And then social things on campus. They might go bowling or, again, things overlap. So here we have, and I'm sure y'all do too, campus buses, right? How do you take the campus bus somewhere? How do you use the bus system? So our buses are also city buses, right? They're
our buses are city buses, just so you know.
So ours are city buses, but they're called like the 40 acres bus, right? So, but how do you actually take the bus? So take your group on the bus and take them over to, Amy's Ice Cream, which is like the big Austin ice cream thing here. And then go back, right? Because that's not just a social thing. They're learning how to use the bus system. They're learning that they have to swipe their ID card on it. They're learning how to read a map, all these things, because many of our students more and more are not having cars on campus, which is new. So thinking about that, taking them to the study abroad fair, taking them to the student org fair, talking to them about campus housing. So adulting, yeah, kind of things. And again, the academics are in there, because that's what students want. You know, we joke that when FIGS started, you know, in the late 80s here at UTAustin, you know, and I'm gonna, again, we can all, I think, appreciate, or most of us can appreciate that, like, we didn't have cell phones in college, and if you said you were going to be somewhere, then you just had to be there, right? People are like, well, what happened if you didn't go? I'm like, you just went. You didn't not go because someone was expecting you, right? Or you put a little note on your door in your residence hall saying, I'm over here, I'm at the dining hall, I'm at this. So FIGS were originally a place for students to actually meet each other once a week, right? And then as that has changed, what do students need now? They don't need us to give them a meeting space, right? But how do we sort of engage them in that group and have them feel like they have a place and a cohort on campus? So I can definitely send to maybe to Shelley some sample semester outlines that we give as examples to our students when they're planning out their seminars. The signature courses, which are also required, are really our intro to learning how to learn at a college level.
Right.
So those are required of students, but they're not always part of that cluster of
Yeah,
class.
we call that scholarly habits of mind.
Right, right.
So what's interesting is the model that we built was this plus an interdisciplinary course. So students had credit, because one of the things that we found was the 0 credit course, students would go the first 2 weeks,
Yep.
and then they were gone. So
Yes,
we had to
that's
build
why
in, unfortunately,
right.
we had to build in an incentive, a grade. But this is
Well, and
this is fascinating. I love the presentation, very detailed. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah. Sarah, yes.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Thank you so much for the presentation. Really, really helpful as we kind of embark on this. So I was curious, when you started in the beginning and you were giving us some statistics, and then later you kind of mentioned these success programs, specifically for like the particular like first gen, lower socioeconomic status. And I was just wondering what kind of additional support is given in those in particular?
Thanks. That's a great question. So we call them like our student success programs. Every school and college now has their own, right? There used to be campus wide. And then once more effort was put into supporting students to a timely graduation, each college started their own. So I would say there's a few major pieces. One is financial support. So there are programs we have here, a campus-wide one called UT for Me, powered by Dell Scholars. So Michael Dell, as you probably know, attended UTAustin. Every student who, I believe it's every student who is Pell eligible, receives a laptop and other supplies that they would need that they might not be able to afford otherwise. And again, also within the schools and colleges, financial support, scholarships, things like that. But also then extra dedicated support from programming, let's say. So this week, for example, we celebrated First Gen Week here on campus. So all of the success programs, because again, that's where many of our first generation college students are housed through sort of, there's been these big activities on campus, right? Sort of celebrating that. And I think too, extra support around what does it mean to be a college student? How do college students learn differently? How does college work? You know, so I talk a lot with our faculty members about not making assumptions that students in high school come into college knowing how college works. Because that's not what high school, at least in the state of Texas, they're wonderful, but they do not prepare students for how to learn in college. And then we just expect them to know how to do that, right? So that's what our signature course helps remedy some, but also working because a lot of our students are first gen students, and because we have the Texas Top 10% law, which I'm not sure if you all know what that is, but that is a bill that was passed years ago where the top 10%, if you graduated from a Texas public high school in the top 10% of your graduating class, you got automatic admission to any Texas public university. Most students choose UTAustin. And so now it's the top 6%. So only 75% of our entering class can be what we call automatically admitted, or else there'd be no room for out of state or private schools or anybody else, right? International students. So what that has done here is in a very positive way, really diversified the number of Texas schools and areas that our students are coming to UTAustin from now, right? But what it also means is that sometimes, you can be in the top 10% of your school at a very affluent school with AP courses and all of this activities and things, and you can get into UTAustin and you can be at a school that is very under-resourced. You didn't have those opportunities and you're also at UTAustin. So how do we help manage and give the support to students who maybe didn't have that in high school, and maybe their high schools didn't really have this college going mentality? And then of course, if you're first gen, just understanding how college works. They work a lot with students on that as well. So lots of small group meetings and activities and meeting with different faculty members and staff members to really make them feel comfortable at UT, and also comfortable, I think, asking questions, right? I think that's an important piece and makes them feel connected.
Yeah. Can I ask, thank you so much. Can I ask a follow-up to that? Is that, and I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, is the rates that you were showing us for participation and graduation, is there a marked difference between a first-gen college student and the general population?
That I don't know off the top of my head, but I can certainly find it. We have that, info. Yeah, sure.
And then just as long as I'm asking, what about non-native English speakers? Because those are two populations that we have a lot of, that we struggle to help effectively enough.
Right. Excellent. Yes, I can definitely find out.
Thanks.
Sure.
Sarah is our new director of the Student Success Center. So thank you, Sarah. Dory.
I was still muted. Thank you so much. This was amazing. My question is how you indicated that first time in college students were encouraged. I wasn't clear whether it was encouraged or required to participate in a learning community or a 360 connection project. We're looking at our onboarding practices have been for 2 decades. And I'm really interested in how and when this requirement is communicated to students and what the response has been. Was it a heavy lift to get the adoption of this, or was it just mandated? Because I'm thinking that, we used to have a University 101 course decades ago. We don't have it for all populations now, but we can. I was particularly interested in the 0 credit seminar concept. And that's why I'm really interested in having this perhaps be part of our onboarding.
And thank you for bringing that up, because I think I mentioned I would tell you that it wasn't always 100%, but where are those other students? So one of the processes that we go through is that we have this database. It's just a homegrown student programs database. And once that's all populated with all the different, what we call rosters, we see, okay, it narrows it down. And here's the usually several hundred students that aren't in something, right? So by college, we sort those out and we send that to the advising coordinator or the assistant dean, the student dean of that college, saying, you have 40 students who aren't in a connection. Could you please follow up with them? Sometimes it's things like, oh, I forgot to put in this program, or if they're missing hundreds usually. But I would say sometimes it's that we define our 360 connections as they need to be academically focused in some way. So fraternities and sororities do not count as connections. We used to count certain residence halls. If they lived in this residence hall, then that was a connection when we were sort of starting out. If they were in a student org, they were in a connection. And we quickly turned from that because We wanted to be more sort of academically focused and housed in an academic unit, since it was very much tied to graduation rates. So normally those students who aren't in any connections are not in a connection because of a few reasons. One, they're in something else that we just don't consider an academic connection. They're in a fraternity or sorority, or they're very involved with the University Catholic Center across the street from campus, or they have a mentor through another non-campus organization they're in, or they just refuse to be in something, right? You're always going to have those couple students who are like, I don't need what you're selling me, right? We just want to know that every student A has been given the opportunity to be in something, because that was a challenge before, right? Not every program had the financial or the human resources to help those students. But we also know that students do make connections in other ways. I always say, I just want to know that someone's got them. Does someone have them? Can I look parents in the eye and say, someone has your student, they know what's going on with them, right? And there are some who just don't participate. That's very rare. The question about, do we require it? So we say, everyone has to be in a 360 connection. Is there a way that we can penalize somebody for not being in one? No. So that's another challenge, is that there's not a mechanism for me to say, hey, School of Social Work, whatever, your students didn't do this. There's nothing I can necessarily do. Now, early on, when these different success programs did get money from the provost to develop these programs, sure, you could say, we're going to withhold your funding unless you provide these services. But without the funding there, it's more of a, we all think this is a really good idea, but there's sort of not that, what do we do if they don't? And that is a definite challenge for us as well. Luckily, our numbers are very, very high. So there's very few students who really is a challenge to find, but at least we reach out. I always think we reach out to the advisory community, we reach out to the school or college, we ask that they follow up, and then they get back to us. So we can just sort of mark those students as like, okay, they're in something, but it's not maybe as we define it. Maybe they're in a sorority or a fraternity on campus, which is obviously a lot of community building. Mm-hmm. They have study sessions, because I see them, in our lobby a lot, but we don't count them as an academic connection in that sense. So that is definitely a challenge. And yes, I wish everyone could take the 0 credit hour course. That would be my dream one day. Thank you for your question.
I see a couple of more hands up. If I could, we have someone who has a class at 11:30 who I wanted to speak really briefly. Would it be okay if I let Anita Giraldo just speak for a few minutes about one of the programs we're working on at this campus? I think a lot of us may not be aware of. So Anita, thank you for hanging in there. You're muted.
Hi there. Hi, everyone. How's everybody doing? Thank you so much, Patty. This was a really wonderful event, and it's very interesting to see how very large institutions are doing something that we've pretty much compressed to our department of 500 students and growing and going through different situations. Shelley, can I share my screen?
Yes, you can.
Okay, good. Right as we were coming out of the pandemic, communication design was tasked with 2 different things. Our attendance in our classes, they started great on the first day, and by the time midterms came around, they were, I'm sure this was the same for most courses, most colleges. And at the same time, we were dealing with, before the pandemic, our students, our retention was getting much better. And part of that was because we were now a NASAD accredited design program. So we were offering a BFA, which other CUNY schools do, but not in design. and that pretty much required us to build some kind of like a mentorship, as well as a peer mentorship, so that students could could graduate and become professionals. So what do? We decided to put together a cohort program. And so I sat down one summer day and took the courses that we had without making too many changes. And I put together a 2-year cohort program. There's an AM program and a late morning program. One has a Friday off, one has a Monday off. And just to see what that was going to be, we did a soft launch. And without collecting much data, we started realizing that students started hanging around class afterwards instead of bolting. And they're talking about their classes in the back of the room. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. So I'd like to show you what we did, because it was it was so successful that we had a hard launch afterwards. And to the point that now we have a 3rd cohort coming in. So you can see some of our courses meet twice a week. And this is the first year. So we have Monday, Thursday, they have Fridays off. Students love that, but you gotta come in at 8 o'clock. That's a different story, but we have that. And slowly we're bringing English on board. So in the 2nd semester, we have another 2-day-a-week class, and there they have math. And the 3rd semester, another 2-week class. But you can see as they cycle through, they get all of their liberal arts as well as their requirements, so that they keep on their financial aid. Now there are other cohorts. You can see that they can, they're off on Monday. And this was so successful that now we started with a PM cohort for students who absolutely have to work during the day. And this is going to be the first time we offer it in the fall semester. And we've realized that students are rather happy with this, to the point that we called it one-click registration. You click, you're enrolled, no problem. And that prepares them for their sophomore review, which is critical to get them into the BFA. And so with that, the idea is, this is how you can progress further to your BFA program. And the main reason that we were having so many problems is something that you pointed out, that high school learning and college learning are 2 different things. Well, high school learning and art school learning is a completely different animal. Here's your homework, come back in a week with it done. They're completely shell-shocked, because then they walk into class to critiques and this and that. And what do we do here? So with this, there's a lot of peer mentoring, so that they have that camaraderie, because this is what you do when you graduate. And now what we're working on, because a lot of our our freshman and sophomore courses are taught by faculty that have more than one office hour, we're organizing how they can meet up with teachers who may not be their own, but get additional tutoring. So that was our program. So far successful. We'll be getting numbers now that we have hard launches, and we'll be able to compare outcomes as well as attendance. Attendance is easy, you can find that out, right?
Right.
And things like that. But that's what we've been doing.
That's
Thank
fantastic.
Yeah, thank you, Anita. Thank you so much. Thank you for sticking around. If maybe we could just, I don't know if we want to do some more questions, or maybe, thank you so much. Okay. If we could quickly go through a few of some of our other programs, and then you're here with us for a while, Patty, right? And
yep.
What I would like to ask, some of these things, some of us are familiar with, and some of them we may not be at all. So part of the objective here is to become familiar with what some others are doing, some I'm not so familiar with. But if we could keep it really short, like think about 3 minutes, so we have time to talk more with Patty. What are the main features of the program? One challenge, what you're looking to do next. And I'll start doing the thing at 3 minutes so that we can get through a few of these. It'd be just awesome. I think I put next up on the agenda the Perkins Peer Advisors, the way we're using them in the architecture program. So here to talk about that is Claudia Hernandez.
Perfect timing. The dog walker for next door is coming, and so please excuse the barking. Actually, do you mind jumping to the next person and then circling back?
Oh,
to me?
sure,
Because-
absolutely. Okay.
Thank you.
Let's
Sorry
see.
about that.
Karen, you're probably jumping up and down out of your seat after that anyway. So you want to talk a little bit about the learning communities and first year and
I am, thank you. As you were speaking, I'm like, yes, that's how we do it. Yes, this is great. Okay, there's we've started, we're not starting from scratch. So it's really exciting. So I'm talking about first year learning communities. I do have a couple of slides, but I'm just going to do, just a brief summary, and then I think I'll just share. First year learning communities has been around City Tech since 2000. So we're building on a really long history, lots of success. We've been able to measure it formally. We have better progress to the next semester. We have higher GPAs at the beginning. We don't measure all the way through because we can't say, like you were saying earlier, we can't say one impact will influence graduation rates, but if we can get them started on a positive level. Anyway, all of the measuring we do, first year learning communities have historically performed better. Recently we looked, and as academic advising initiatives have happened across campus, we were thinking about our undeclared students. They don't have an advisor. They don't have a department to go to as part of their identity. Often, if you talk to a City Tech student, they're like, I'm an architecture student at City Tech. I'm a hospitality management student at City Tech. So we were hoping that we can create some sort of an identity for them. And we created first year learning communities for undeclared students. So let me just change. Oh, come on, change to presentation mode. My computer's frozen. Shoot. Can you hear me?
we can hear you. Yeah.
You can hear me, but my screen is frozen and all of you are frozen. So I will try and stop sharing, but I cannot. Anyway, first year learning communities.
There it is.
There it is, but it looks, I'm going to just stop sharing. It is going back and forth, making me dizzy. Anyway, first year learning communities at City Tech, we kind of look at it in 5 ways. We have block scheduling. Students will be in the same courses with each other. They have academic advising in this first year learning community model. They all have peer mentors. That is something that has happened through the 22 years of the first year learning community program. So we're happy that that is continuing through here. What is new? 2 things are new. First is a CT 101 workshop, and I believe Sarah is still here. And she was the co-creator of this program with me. And I believe I saw Jody Rosen in here too. And Jody is actually currently a leader in the first year programs. So I recently stepped away due to taking on the chairperson's position for my department. So I just need to give a shout out to them, and others that have also taught in the program are here as well. So we have a long history of embedding first year learning communities. Anyway, what is unique now? That CT 101 workshop is an opportunity for students to identify their email address, talk to others, talk to teachers in a way that doesn't tie to a grade, so that they can start practicing that communication where they may not have ever done this before, because we know they're coming out of high school. It's a completely different thing. CT 101 workshop also has some special features, all working off of student learning outcomes. So I know that you mentioned that early too, and that was really important when Sarah and I were sitting down to design CT 101. We started with student learning outcomes. We didn't just start with, oh, we want a field trip, or, oh, we want them to talk to a counselor, or, oh, we want them to be able to use the open lab and learn how to share their work in an open environment. We started with learning outcomes. And everything is designed there. When we question, should we do this? We go back to the learning outcomes. And that's something exciting. One of them is a shared project. So we have designed an opportunity for students across first-year learning communities. There are 5 of them with, I believe, 111 students. That part, I don't know off the top of my head. Yes, 111 students, approximately 22 in each learning community. And they will come together and work on one project based on Allegory of the Cave. And we are excited to see that. This is the first semester we're doing it in this manner. So we do not have any outcomes of this shift, but we're really excited to be able to share that. I'll close this up real fast in a moment, but I also want to share that it was also important for us to work with a mission statement for the first year learning community. So we had designed one, I don't know, I want to say 8 or 9 years ago. And then when we shifted to change the focus from discipline specific first year learning communities to those for undeclared, we gathered with the faculty members who were really dedicated and had long-term commitments with first year learning communities. And we wrote a mission statement, and that too helps guide us. So you may have not seen my face because you were sharing your screen, but as you were talking, I was very often going, yes, yes. That's how we do it. And we're happy to hear that other institutions are finding success with it as well. So thank you for your time, everybody.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you so much. Yeah, we've had learning communities at the college for many years. We do have a lot of challenges around scheduling. It's very difficult. Not enough people sign up, they get canceled, people, students can't. So it's been a challenge, but it works with smaller groups of students. So. Yeah. Okay, great. Claudia, is your dog happily on his way?
I am so sorry, right? Members of remote anything. Hi, everyone. Very happy to be here. It's been really insightful to hear all the presentations so far. So thank you very much. So I am faculty in the Department of Architectural Technology. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about the Perkins Peer Mentor Program, which has been running for about 7 years now. This is a Perkins grant that Professor Melanie Villatoro, who's the chair of the CMC department, initiated and really is running the program. My role has been to be the liaison for the Department of Architectural Technology. The grant itself, the idea behind it is it wanted to focus on underrepresented students, specifically looking at female students in STEM programs. And so what we were looking at is that typically there were larger attrition rates for these students, and that they often didn't reach out for the resources that were available. So we were really trying to support and encourage these particular group of students. So the program started by hiring, and the way that we were hoping to achieve this was through peer support. So what we started to do is hire upper level students who were typically in their 3rd or 4th year of the program and offer tutoring services to the students. So what they did is they came into all the first year classes and they introduced themselves and, encouraged the students to come and meet with them. And then usually there were 2 events per year that also were run by them to try to increase community. But what we discovered is that was not very successful, that the students were not actually using the office hours, even though the peer mentors were reaching out and sending emails. We gave them all the contact information, but the students were not really responsive. So I would say that the really big shift we did is that we have courses that are very much skill-based learning and active learning. And so what we did is we took the peer mentors and we embedded them into the courses. And so they actively now were folded into the courses, and they come and participate and help the students, when they're having any issues. And so that has increased the involvement between the upper level students quite a bit. And what's really wonderful is that they become this amazing resource, because there's the help that happens in the classroom, but they really help them navigate, how do I sign up for classes? Talk about who, what faculty you like, what courses to take. So in that sense, it's been really, really wonderful for them to make the connections. And maybe I can leave it at that so that I don't take up too much more time.
Okay, thank you, Claudia. Yeah, I just put a note in the chat also, and as I understand it, you also we have advisors come and speak to the first year classes, about different options in the major and so forth. So it becomes sort of a cohort in itself because it's such a huge contact hour studio.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really talk about this, but I'm also the co-director of the Bachelor's of Architecture program, which is a new accredited degree. And through that, we're doing a really big push on advisement. So both myself and the other co-director, we come into all of the courses during their second year courses. And we talk about, like, we do a quick introduction about all the career paths at the college and options. And then we also visit all of the courses in their full, so, in the track, the main course or the program requirements. And then we sort of visit again with a more detailed version of it. So we're trying to get as much information out there. And we're also getting them to see our faces. Like the first thing I always say, this is who I am, stop me in the hallway and introduce yourself. And so that's been super helpful because I think it's really getting the students engaged, and they definitely participate and are more active by doing that.
Great, thank you, Claudia. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay, Kwesi Samuels is texting me. He needs to go to another meeting, so I will let him speak next. Kwesi is director of our ASAP and ACE programs. He'll explain.
Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry for having my screen off, but I'm using an old laptop that does not have a camera. All right, so ASAP and ACE pretty much are graduation and retention programs designed for students to graduate ASAP with their associate's degree in 3 years or less, and with ACE with their bachelor's degree in 2 years or less. To be eligible for ASAP, students need to have earned no more than 30 credits. And to be eligible for ACE, students need to have either obtained an associate's degree or have earned no more than 80 credits. So the goals of these programs are to graduate 50% of the students. And, we do this by offering a variety of different benefits to our students. Benefits such as transportation. So all of our students receive Metro cards for the fall and spring semesters. They also receive Metro cards if they are taking summer classes or winter classes. We offer tuition assistance to students who are in receipt of financial aid, but there's a gap. So not enough to cover the entire cost. ASAP or ACE will step in and pay the remaining balance. We give students funds, $315 each semester to purchase books and supplies. And the most important piece to this program is all students are assigned an academic advisor that they work with the entire time that they're in the program. The ratio is 150 students to 1, so our advisors have more than enough time to dedicate to each student on a monthly basis. The requirements for students are to, pretty much to meet with your advisor on a monthly basis. So it's very simple requirements for our students to maintain eligibility for the program. Another thing that I left out is that we also offer tutoring services to students. And most recently, we incorporated a service, online platform called tutoring.com, where students are able to receive tutorial services 24/7. And that we put that in place because, we realized that students were in need of support outside of, our normal business hours. So we do still offer in-house tutoring, through 9 to 5, but, because of that need, many students working or, many of our students doing, their studies at night, we felt like this would be a good resource for them. So we are struggling with tutoring.com, the usage of it a little bit, and, not sure if it's because it's new or what the situation is, but we would definitely like to see some increased usage, with the platform. What we are noticing are that the students who do log in and do receive support, they come back. right? But it's just getting students there, in the first place. So, that's one struggle that we have that we are currently, addressing. But for the most part, we have been successful in graduating 50% of our students, within that 3-year mark for ASAP. And in regards to ACE, we just launched our first cohort of ACE students this past spring semester. Currently, we have a total of 250 students in the program. So there's no graduation rates yet, but we have been able to retain 95% of that initial cohort that started this past spring.
Great. Great, thank you, Kwesi. And this is we don't have Dell Computer here, but this is these are funded programs. I think they're funded by the city or city and state. There's special funding that supports.
Yes, through the mayor's office and the state, yes.
Yeah, okay.
As well as Robin Hood for ACE.
Yes, okay, great. All right, thank you, Kwesi. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Let's see, Mary, could you speak a few minutes about Career Futuros, and very appropriate to the Developing Hispanic Serving Institutions grant that we're working on, yeah.
Yeah, hi everyone. Great to be here and to listen to all of the initiatives that are taking place at City Tech. It's always great to be in a group of peers doing the same efforts. I'm a faculty member of the Human Services Department, and I also oversee the Crear Futuros, Creating Futures peer mentorship program. This program is funded by the Hispanic Federation, and it's been funded at City Tech since 2015, and it's gone through a few different versions. Originally, the program targeted all students at City Tech, all first-year students at City Tech. The initiative is to support first-year Latinx students through persistence and graduation at the college. Initially, we were recruiting across the campus. About 3 years ago, we remodeled, and the program is primarily serving students in the Human Services Department. So we do have an anchor course, which is the Human Services Introduction to Human Services course, 1101. We hire four peer mentors. Each peer mentor ideally has a caseload of 15 to 20 students who they are meeting about 3 times individually throughout the semester. But the mentors also facilitate monthly workshops. The students who participate in the program as mentees are also invited to participate in leadership and professional development events that are coordinated and hosted by the Hispanic Federation and their funding partners. All events that happen in and off campus provide an incentive, usually a gift card. Participation is also encouraged through participation credit in the 1101s. Surprisingly enough, we still struggle with student participation, even given all of these sort of embedded and incentives around the program, but we have had more successful participation since we remodeled in this version. We've also aligned the program with our internship requirements. So the peer mentors who are hired to work in this role are students who are upper level students and are also meeting their internship requirement. Human services students have to complete 4 semesters of internship of a minimum of 125 hours to 200 hours any given semester. So these are students who have sort of advanced skills in engagement and counseling. What else can I say about the program? Recently, we've also, before the pandemic, we were mainly doing in-person events and in-person meetings. Through the pandemic, it was all virtual. Now we're offering both in-person and virtual options, and we're really able to reach all different kinds of students who are the traditional students and the non-traditional students. So this really has improved our access.
Great, thank you so much, Mary. I'm going to be talking to you later about why it's not across the entire campus, but that's for another day. Let's see, Rob Ostrom is working with English 1101 Co, and I'm anxious to hear more about this. I don't know much about it myself. So Rob, could you say a few words about
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. It's so good to see you. And Patty, thanks so much for your presentations. Very inspiring. I'm Rob. I'm the co-rec coordinator. English 1101 Co is a comprehensive English composition course that covers all the essential mainstream composition content with 2 additional classroom hours to support students who would typically be placed in a developmental reading or writing class. So we used to have developmental reading and writing, and then we switched to this model. All the sections follow the same curriculum outline as English composition. We have 3 units, an education narrative, a research unit, and a genre unit. And so because we have so many composition courses, following these units allows us to collaborate and have workshops for instructors and students, shared experiences, and it also helps with onboarding. So I'm just going through the things you wanted me to talk about, Shelley. Eligibility, the university uses a proficiency index to figure out who goes in these classes. And as soon as I think that I understand the formula, they change it. It combines like students' overall high school grades with standardized tests to determine if they should be in the co-rec. This semester we have 12 sections and about 21 students in each section. So we have about 250 students. That's not typical. That's the most we've ever had. I think next semester we're going to have about 7 sections. And the challenges are many. Onboarding is a real struggle. Retention is very low, especially post-pandemic. I think that students feel isolated, and I know that they lack college readiness skills. We recently received a grant, a developmental education reform grant to do a variety of interventions. So we're gonna have some professional development workshops, student workshops, and I think most importantly, we're gonna conduct some research to try to really get at the root of why the students are dropping out.
Do you use peer mentors in the section?
We do have peer mentors, yeah.
Okay, great. Well, this is fairly new, so we'll be we'll be looking forward to seeing how you figure out the challenges.
Yeah,
Great, thank you. Thank you, Rob. Let's see, I think I skipped over SEEK. Keisha, can you say a few words about the SEEK program? This is a very long-standing program at the university.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I was asked to participate. I'm a SEEK counselor. My name is Keisha Swaby. I'm a SEEK counselor at the Percy E. Sutton SEEK program. And SEEK stands for Search for Education and Elevation Through Knowledge. So this program is a state-funded program, special opportunity program that came about through the civil rights struggles of the 1960s. So in 1966, we were established through the hard fights of New York State senators and civil rights leaders such as Percy E. Sutton, David Dinkins, Basil Peterson, and Charles Wrangler. So the SEEK program spans over the senior campuses within CUNY. And then we have our sister program, College Discovery, which exists in the community colleges within CUNY. So it's twofold. We have SEEK and then we have CD, College Discovery. So we provide a comprehensive programs and services that include tutoring, academic services, tutoring, academic coaches, counseling services, one-on-one counselors. We also provide financial assistance to our students in the form of stipends. And also we offer one-on-one academic advisement for our freshman population. So it mimics much of the programs that exist. We also, in order for students to become eligible for the SEEK program, they have to meet certain income criteria. Low-income students from a diverse range of cultural backgrounds who are oftentimes first-generation students and have applied to City Tech or who are receiving some type of state-funded program assistance. So SEEK provides a network of different opportunity services. For example, all of our students have to participate in a summer experience program. And this program helps with the transition from high school to college. We offer non-credit bearing courses in English and math to help them acclimate themselves to college level English and math. And we also offer SEEK X summer courses or workshops that helps with skill building, introductions to students to college policies, and also socializing with themselves to know that they are part of the Sikh family or Sikh community. During the fall, we are blessed to have a one credit bearing course, which is the AAA 1010 course, the freshman seminar course, which provides them with an orientation to college life and help them to develop academic skills as well as soft and hard skills and interpersonal and social skills. We meet with these students once a week in our AAA 1010 class, and then students, every counselor has a caseload and they meet with their students one-on-one for at least 3 times during the semester, or as much as the student needs to meet with their counselor. Students are required to attend tutoring services at least once a week. That is a mandate, 16 hours for the semester. And also to engage in workshops that we offer throughout the semester that can include workshops on physical health, mental health, spiritual health, and also financial knowledge. One successful strategy is that in the spring of 2018, we established an assessment committee that continuously assesses the effectiveness and delivery of our services, so we can ensure that we are aligned with the college's mission, as well as the middle state standards for accreditation and requirements affiliation. That's key to our program. Looking at outcomes is key to anyone's program. So every semester we assess student satisfaction with the delivery of our services to know how we are doing. We also monitor outcomes and look at trends across semesters that might affect academic standing, such as enrollment status, graduation retention, or credit momentum, as we know in CUNY, as well as how many credits they're earning to how many credits they're not earning, pass and fall rates in certain courses. And then we develop initiatives to support increasing or decreasing behaviors or outcomes in each of those areas. Our committee collects, assesses, and shares the student outcomes with the entire program or stakeholders. And every January we get together, this is a practice of our old administration. Every January we get together and we sit down and we break bread in regards to how can we improve our services based on these outcomes. So we're constantly changing to meet the needs of our students based on where they are and what their outcomes are, and we want to increase our retention rates and as well as graduation. One challenge that we're facing right now is that with fewer kids going to college post-pandemic, we, like other institutions across the nation and within CUNY, we're feeling the impact of low student enrollment. So we are going to be taking a more proactive approach into joining the college's recruitment efforts. Can you all hear me?
Yes,
Okay, so one of my iPods went dead. We're also going to be joining the college in the recruitment efforts and informing more high schools, local high schools, about the SEAT program and encouraging them to join us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Keisha. Thank you. Okay.
Sorry. Could I just ask, I don't know if I missed it. Did you say how many students are in SEAT roughly?
So roughly, currently, it's typically about 1,000 students that we take in. Our continuing students range from about 800 and our freshmen, depending on the year, about 200. So typically 1,000 students, over a little of 1,000 students. So we've been struggling with numbers lately.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm worried about our time. I want to hear from a few other things, but we want to make sure we have, I know there were a few more questions for Patty. I don't know if Reggie, you wanted to say just like 2 words about Black Male Initiative, and or Sarah, if you wanted to leave time, it's up to you.
So 2 words, Shelley?
Yes.
You're funny. First of all, to say to Patty, thank you so very much for a very insightful, very comprehensive presentation. We gained a lot from listening to you today. And we just want to say thank you on behalf of the president and our provost. Thank you for what you have deposited in our spirits and the ideas you have given to us. I just recall I was on your campus about 12 years ago, Patty, part of the LSM program at UT El Paso with Ben Flores, and really enjoy being there. So thank you for stopping by to talk to us today. Shelley, I'll just share 2 slides. I had prepared my presentation before I saw your 3-minute time frame. 2 slides, and that's it.
Thank you. So Reginald Blake is our associate provost. I should have introduced you properly.
That's fine. That's fine.
Involved in millions of things on campus, yes. So while we're waiting for that to come up, you're also involved in undergraduate research with some interesting programs that may create cohorts as well. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
All right. So this BMI program, BMI is an acronym for Black Male Initiative. This program has been at City Tech for the past 17 years. And we have served over 8,000 students, and approximately 40% of our students are females, 60% are male. I won't get into the story of why it's called Black Male Initiative. It's a misnomer, as you can see. We not only have males, but females, and we have students from all ethnic groups at City Tech. So that's really a misnomer, but that's the name that the program has. The mission and the goals of the program, we really focus on creating access and success for African American and Hispanic males in STEM. There are about 25 BMI programs in CUNY. Ours is the only one designated for STEM. So we focus on creating access and success for Hispanics and African American males in the STEM disciplines. I will jump some of these slides and just talk, well, let me talk about this one. So the guiding principles that we abide by are culturally competent peer-to-peer mentoring, socio-emotional programming, diversity recruitment, academic enhancements. And we roll all of that into this final slide, which really captures the very essence of the program. So this is our slide that shows the main components of the BMI structured mentoring program. Our students are focused, they're in the very middle. And then we have three other groups that interact with our students. We have faculty mentoring, we have peer mentoring, and City Tech community mentoring. And I'll just quickly talk about each one. For the faculty mentoring, our students are given STEM exposure trips. They are prepared for graduate school, and they have capstone workshops, leadership seminars. They're heavily involved in STEM research, and they also attend, not just attend, but participate, make presentations at STEM conferences. Then we have peer mentoring. We have STEM PAL workshops, and PAL is peer-assisted learning. So they're guided by their peers. We have STEM tutoring. We do have a BMI club, and we have what's called a BMI barber beauty shop. It's a safe space that was first created for young men to meet and to talk about issues pertaining to young men. And it's really moving and emotional to hear our young men talk about the issues they face on a daily basis. We usually have a counselor in the room to listen to them and to provide guidance and counseling. After a while, the young ladies heard about the barbershop and they wanted a place for themselves as well. And so we created what's called a beauty shop, and they were able to share their own experiences, and once a month would bring both groups together. And finally, we have the community mentoring. And what we do, we make sure that what the students learn in the classroom is taken out into the community. So they're involved in community service. They're involved in breast cancer walks. They're involved in cleaning up parks. They're involved in tutoring at the middle school and high school level. So they take what they learn in the classroom at City Tech out into the community. And finally, one of the things that we do with them is what we call our service learning component. And for that, for example, we take our students out into the neighborhood and have them do something like this. And that is to take the research they have learned at City Tech out into the community. So here, one of our students is showing a young man how a drone works and how a drone can be used to take land surface temperature of the neighborhood in which this young man lives. So we take the science out to the community and get our students involved. So I'll stop here, Shelley, and if there are any questions, I doubt we have time, but I'll stop here. The last thing I'll say is that our program has produced over the last couple of years, 6 valedictorians and 4 salutatorians at City Tech. So it's a very productive and successful program from our vantage point. So thank you so very much for the time.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was great to learn more details, and sorry to put so much pressure on you. We need a whole session, I think, on some of these things. So Sarah, I don't know if you want to say a word, or we had a couple of questions left for Patty. It's up to you whether you want to.
I can cede my time to questions.
Okay. Okay, well, he'll be hearing more about the Student Success Center as time goes on. Kim, I think you had your hand up with a question before we
did. I'm going back to the presentation, but it was great to hear more about so many City Tech programs. So Patty, I just wanted to ask, I just came back from a higher ed conference, and one of the most interesting presentations I heard was talking about assessing equity impact and impact on closing gaps between groups. And I was wondering if that's an explicit part of your assessment. I know one of your 5 experiences is around inclusivity and diversity, and that training happens for students, but do you provide training on unconscious bias and how to mentor people through that, like that kind of professional development to everybody offering these experiences?
So we do partner with some groups who already do that on campus, right? So we have bias busting. We developed a program with the Office of the Vice President of Student Affairs called Words Matter about microaggressions and things like that. So while we provide that, we don't require that they use a certain program. We also have a group that does the privilege walk, if you've heard of that, right? So different things. There are different programs on campus who are in charge of tracking things like equity and whatnot. And I could definitely put you all in touch with those groups. So one person who I joking I could knock on the wall, she's right there, is the person who sent me those documents about first gen students, Hillary Prochnow. She's our assistant dean for student equity and excellence. So it is sort of, we work in conjunction with them, but that is sort of under their portfolio to track, but I could definitely put you in touch with her if you'd like.
Oh, that's okay, thank you. And then the other question was, do you do professional development for the folks who are leading students through this inclusivity pillar on their own kind of unconscious biases and things, their language and that kind of thing?
We do. And so we have offered that as part of the professional development conferences that we run. Of course, that doesn't get everyone, but it's a large group. But we definitely do. And we do things with our own colleagues in our school and colleges. So maybe not that everyone's a facilitator for one of those groups, but many of the colleges are also doing that sort of on their own with their staff. So I think, you know, although we don't hit everyone, we have offered that as an opportunity to do some implicit bias training and things like that with different groups.
Great, thank you so much. And just personal note, I am a UT graduate and was a beneficiary of that 10%.
Yay, congrats.
Learn something new every day, terrific. So I know it's noon, and if people need to go, please do go. If you can stay around for 1 or 2 more minutes, Patty, we might answer a few more questions. That would be awesome. But if people need to go, please go. I want to respect people's time, of course, but this is so exciting. I think a lot of us do still have questions. So I see Jody had a question about whether the cohorts are maintained past the first year.
Yeah, and so we only track the cohorts. It's a requirement for the first semester for first-time in college students. Many of them continue on informally, but our commitment to the programming is for fall semester. Only we have, I could probably count on, you know, on my 2 hands how many actual first-time in college freshmen we have who start in a spring semester. Very, very few compared to the thousands and thousands we have in the fall.
And is orientation around, are they in their cohorts for orientation, or is orientation structured such that it's a cohort model? like that?
Orientation here is structured that we have about 1,200 students each week for about 7 weeks. And they mostly are grouped by college and by major or program. That's when they find out what connection they will be in and what their opportunities are. So they work with their colleges at orientation to say, we're going to have you do this FIG, that counts as your connection, or you're in this, that counts as your connection. So the advising teams work with their own students to inform them about what connections they are already in and which ones they might also be eligible to join if they would like to.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, Sarah.
Sorry, I think Natalie had her hand up. I don't want to.
Oh, sorry, I don't see your hand is the color of your bookcase. Sorry.
My hand is brown. That's why it's hard to see. I have a quick question for Patty. Patty, so you were talking about assessing belonging and trying to come up with ways to do that. Could you, and this is a topic that we're all thinking through, especially because our freshmen were online. And who, trying to connect them to an institution, to each other, has been such a challenge, or is and probably will be a challenge for the next few years. So were there some strategies that you had in place before that have helped, or have you brought in other activities, or have you been mindful of that sense of belonging, that maybe you can share success stories or challenges or just some thinking around it?
Right. And actually it's funny because we just had yesterday found out that we got a paper accepted to AERA about sense of belonging, sort of pre and post surveys for our FIG students during COVID. So I can actually even show you that too. But so we do.
I would love to see that. Love to see it.
So we do pre and post surveys with our students. How did they feel coming in, right? And did we actually deliver the things? Did they learn the things that we wanted them to learn at the end? When the pandemic hit, right? I mean, everything we do is pretty much in person. So we had to pivot to, like everybody did, how do we do this online? And how do we acclimate students, sort of this post-pandemic world? I did a presentation for faculty, and I could share that with you all as well, about some research on how we're now seeing sort of this wave of post-pandemic. Students don't really have, I don't think the wherewithal for how to be in a classroom in a physical space, right? So if you think about all of we tried to really focus on, during their very informative years of high school, they didn't go to football games or dances or prom or go to lunch with their friends, or, right? I mean, my daughter is a freshman now in high school, but my son was a junior and senior during the pandemic. And it's just, it became that was so important and they missed it. And now I think we had to put in more effort now, and again, not make the assumption that they know how to do that. I work a lot with faculty about stop making assumptions about what you think students should and shouldn't know. Or we all learned, I sort of use the example, we all learned Zoom etiquette. Don't talk over each other, raise your hand, take yourself off of mute, you're on mute. And now they have to go into a classroom and that's different for them, right? So we try to focus on sense of belonging in terms of making sure we're also very cognizant of our students' lived experiences and the toll that's taken on them. So I think sense of belonging, we also focused much more heavily, and I think our faculty did as well, on just student well-being. And that was, students cannot learn if they don't feel well enough emotionally,
safe,
physically,
happy,
mentally, right? They're not going to learn in your class, right? So how do you connect with students in that way? And then I think that will help develop this sense of belonging. I think students are going from, go ahead.
Oh, I'm so sorry. How have you scaffolded from I'm online, I just attend my classes and I'm comfortable in my PJs at home, I can eat, drink, do whatever, all of those experiences that we had during COVID, to now you're part of a community and there are all these activities that are formative at the in person.
Right.
How did you scaffold to that? So like, I mean, I've been to a UTAustin football game. That is a thing. I mean, when people tell me, should I go see the Dallas Cowboys? I say, no, go to a UTAustin game. Like that's football.
Right. Right. Yeah.
and
And you know, from what I gather from some student feedback that was done sort of informally and by other groups, it was really the upperclassmen who had the hardest time coming back from the pandemic, because they have or had a sense of loss. They knew what they were missing. Students coming in as first years, I mean, they know the football games, but they didn't do college yet. So to them, they don't have this sense of I'm losing my social circles, I'm losing my physical space. So I actually think first year students have probably had an easier time with it, at least from our point of view, is because they didn't really know what to expect. And so this is what is normal for them. But we make sure, and still I think we make sure that we do offer things sometimes virtually or asynchronously, even though we're primarily in person in small groups, because we also know that that is a comfort for students sometimes. And so balancing from going from 0 to 100,
right?
How do we, like, again, maybe 80% of it is in person, but we do have some opportunities or things we might do in the evening where students can Zoom in. Also, so they don't have to walk by themselves if they don't want to. I mean, we have all these shore walk programs, but a lot of students said they actually get more group work done now that there is Zoom. So that was a benefit of, I don't have to go to the library, meet with this group. We can just meet from our rooms and get more work done. So I also think that newer students are finding ways to almost see the benefits of being online. And we are really making sure that we try to show them the benefits of being in person, right? But I do think it is a balance.
Right.
I also think that students didn't realize they have to show up for class.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I mean, and that's not even like, that's not being
100%.
like, but like they really, like, faculty are like, and I'm like, because you cannot make assumptions that they know, because they've been on a Zoom classroom and maybe it's just they didn't have to actually put their camera on. So maybe they were there, but I don't know. Right. So a lot of these almost like integrating back into society, like we've all had to do. It's been tough, but from what I can tell, students they were really looking for that again. And even though some programs were still like, maybe we should slow down and not revamp so fast, the students were sort of asking for that. But yeah, so we try to also be mindful that some students cannot yet return to campus because of different reasons, dealing with the pandemic and whatnot. So we want to be sure we're also accessible to those students. I don't know if that answered your question or not. But.
No, that was amazing. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Sarah's been waiting patiently. Our Student Success Center Director.
So I had a question. You mentioned that all of the FIGs have peer mentors. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so I was just wondering, like, first of all, what is the ratio of, is it a one-on-one? Is it a, like 20-to-1 for the peer mentors? And then I have a follow-up question.
So the ratio is there's one peer mentor per group of students, and that group of students is usually about 20. So one of the requirements is that during the semester, they have like a half an hour one-on-one meeting with each of those students, but it's one mentor per group, one peer mentor per group.
Okay. And then, so my question is, what kind of training do you do with the peer mentors, and kind of what is expected, what is their expected contribution to this, cohort
Right,
system?
right. And I have lots of stuff I can send you on this too, which is good. But I would say, so the training for mentors, for our mentors for FIGs and TRIGs, is that we offer and require a 1-hour credit training class in the spring semester before they start leading the FIG in the fall. So right now we are in our recruitment phase of having students apply to be peer mentors. That ends at the end of this month, and then based on need and college decisions and things like that, they find out right before winter break if they are chosen as a mentor, so that we can register for them for one of the sections of the 1 hour class. So the 1 hour class is pass fail. It is taught by myself and members of my team, who are program coordinators and directors of different FYE programs. We are going back to teaching probably 8 or 9 sections of about 20 or 30 new mentors each. So this is just for the new mentors, because we have probably, I don't know, usually 200 or so. We pre-pandemic and then during the pandemic, we tried the lecture discussion model, where myself and our FIG program coordinator would each lead a lecture of about 100 students. And then they would meet with another one of our team members for a smaller discussion section during the week. We did that because we had very few staff members, and just out of numbers, we had to do that. I don't think it was as effective, because I felt like I didn't really know my students. And although I love to teach that, and so that was difficult. So we're going to go back, now that we're sort of full staff, we're going to go back to that. Everyone has a smaller group that they work with. They meet once a week for about 2 hours, but just for like 9 or 10 weeks in the beginning of the semester. And I can send you our materials for that too. So it's a lot of it is 30,000 foot stuff, because we realized if we are trying to help you be a mentor and a leader, it shouldn't matter what school or college. It shouldn't always matter what group of students you're going to lead. These should be skills that we're teaching you that you're going to use in whatever you do. So we talk about student development theory. We talk about motivational interviewing, how to have difficult conversations. We talk about group dynamics, characteristics of good leaders. And then towards the end, we actually narrow down like, okay, so how do you actually create a lesson plan? How do you decide what topics you're going to use? What would you do for this? And we give them a final exam, because we have to have something to base the grade on. And they're usually short answers, and very few of them there's a right or wrong answer. They are usually situational, because that's what we need to know. Like, can you actually, if this were to happen, what would you do? Or if a student came to you and said this, where would you refer that student to? And that type of thing. We are also starting up a program for our returning mentors. So we have mentors who come back for a second or third year. We don't have them take the training course again, because although it sort of differs as time goes on, like this past time, we added in a whole section on empathy across campus and whatnot. We're trying to find a way we don't want to add a credit hour. UTAustin is very strict about how many hours different programs will pay for, and does it count towards your degree plan and all of these things, which is why we don't have a credit bearing FIG seminar. That's one of the major reasons, is that because we got such pushback from the colleges. So, but we have them do that. They write a final reflection essay about what they've learned and how they hope to use that, short, 3 pages, maybe. Sample semester outline. We require them to meet with the person who will be their facilitator in the fall. And then during the fall semester, their requirements are they have to attend every FIG seminar, so once a week for an hour. They need to be available to students for one-on-one meetings. They have to organize some events that go, but really the idea is that they're supposed to work in collaboration with the staff facilitator to determine what the topics are, who the speakers will be, when they're going to go somewhere, so that sort of varies depending on who the facilitator or mentor are. But their expectation is that they are there as a resource for students every FIG seminar. They also are employees of our office. So we hire hundreds of students. So we pay them $12 an hour, I think, which is not a lot. They work about 60 hours a semester. So really just a couple hours a week, but it's something that we can give them for their time. And they're expected to make sure that the topics that we ask are covered. right? So again, that's where we have a little bit more oversight of that, because they're going to turn in what they did, and we'll be able to see if they actually, worked on the different shared experiences. And so I think it's also an expectation too, that what we really want from students is that they are the student voice, right? I mean, I went to a really large university. I went to Rutgers in Jersey, and I can talk about my experiences at a very large state institution. They don't, I'm 100 years old to them, right? Like they don't care. And even for people who went to UTAustin, that's like ages ago to them, right? So having a current student talk to them about what it's like to be a current student, and pairing them with a professional staff member who actually knows the rules and can help you register and then the policies. To me, I think that is what makes it work, is because I think peers only, sometimes that can get off track easily. And then professional staff only, I don't know that the students really, I mean, they connect with them, but it's different, right? Because we're not students. So to me, that is their role. And that is why they're so important, is because they are the current student voice. And they are sharing experiences that these students are sharing. I would say that probably 70% of our mentors are applying right now while they're freshmen. So the majority of our mentors are actually sophomores, not seniors, because they're in the FIGs and stuff right now. And they're like, and then we go to the thing, we say, hey, do you want to be a mentor for the next year's class? And a bunch of them apply. So actually, I think a lot of times people think, oh yeah, you get these seniors. They are first year students applying to work with next year's first year students, which I actually think is pretty, pretty cool.
Yeah, that's nice. So in our CT 101 course, we do have that embedded model where we have an instructor and then we have one or two peer mentors embedded right in the course. But I think that one of the things we struggle with at the college, mostly because of lack of resources, is kind of balancing how much a peer can really be expected to accomplish without that paired staff or faculty.
And agreed, right? And again, I think because we tell them, like, the expectation is that you're not going to really work for your FIG maybe more than like 3 hours a week. You're going to be in the FIG for an hour. We ask that you meet with your facilitator for an hour a week to plan, and then other things that you might be doing. We also require outside hours, which are, you have to take them somewhere or do something in the evening, or you're going to watch a movie on campus. So we have a requirement of like 20 outside hours. So they know it's not this 20-hour, you're a, GRA commitment. It's a small commitment, but an impactful one. So I think because we lay that out there, that in these 3 hours a week, you're going to have this major impact on these students. And then we also get feedback at the end of the semester from their facilitator, who talks about, like, would you actually have the student as a mentor again? That type of thing as well. We also have a fall professional development series that we started during COVID. And that's for any mentor to come, and we'll have, like, we did them on Zoom again this semester just out of ease, but we had someone come and present on mindfulness, so they could maybe use that for themselves and for their students. We had someone else come and talk about the racial diversity or cultural diversity on campus from, way back when to now, because students, I think, don't know, like, the campus's history. Right, we're taking down these statues. Well, why are you doing that? What were they of in the first place? And the students who are starting, again, they didn't have the experience of these things were here and now they're not here, right? They're just, this is what it is to them. So we have a lot of good speakers on that, like from our gender and sexuality centers and from our multicultural centers and things like that, talking about what it's like to be a UT student. So a lot of these things are also led by maybe upperclassmen or graduate students, which I think is also helpful for students to really engage in those areas.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Thank you for staying over. This is like
Oh,
the,
sure.
this is the standing around after the meeting is over discussion, right? So,
Right. And I want to make sure that you all know that this is not the only time I'm accessible to you. As you could probably tell, this is what I love to do, is meet with other teams who are developing this, because then it helps me too. It gives me some good ideas. Or if someone's like, well, why do you do that? I really have to think, well, why do we do that? Maybe we shouldn't do that. Or maybe I'm going to take one of your ideas. So to me, this is very, very beneficial. So please, again, as you're moving through this, I'm happy to meet with a smaller group just to brainstorm. Or again, I will send Shelley over the next few days a lot of information. I'll probably send it in a couple different emails, but I can send something about, here's everything we do for mentors. Here's everything we do for this class. Here's what we do for 360 Connections, that type of thing. One thing that I failed to mention is, and people usually ask me, how much of a budget did 360 Connections have? And I think I said not very much, but, and again, it's hard to tell because 360 Connections was a sliver of all of these other millions of dollars that came to the university for all of these other programs. So overall, I don't know how much total monies there are. I know that we got about $200,000 a year during those 5 years. So part of that was staff salary at about $50,000 a year. And then the rest paid for that increase in learning communities. So when people like doubled, we just want double the number of FIGs, we want double the number of this. Well, that means we have to hire double the number of mentors. We have to pay double the number of mentors. We have to provide fund money. We give each group $100 to like buy pizza or go somewhere. So there's another couple $1,000s. So that got spent very quickly. But that was on top of what we already had as our base for running our FIG program. So yeah, so not a ton, but boy, when that went away, we had to, because it was either figure out how to do it, or the university is like, what do you mean you're not running this anymore? So we were sort of in a tough spot. But I think, we figured it out, but, and we had lots of warning, but I think no one really thought they were going to stop paying for something that was so successful. So, but they did, but it wasn't a lot. And again, we paid a staff salary out of that. We did get continuing funding for that staff line afterwards. So I actually still have that line of funding. They didn't pull the person, that position, they pulled the other funding. So I still get that funding. And then we supplement now because the salary needs to be higher after 10 years.
yeah, always a challenge.
Mhm.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I'll be circulating what you send us. And
Excellent.
I'm sure we'll be reaching out with other questions.
Please do. I'm really excited too in learning about y'all's programs. They're just fantastic. So congratulations on that. It has been wonderful to speak with you today.
Okay, we'll figure out how to use some of our grant money to keep us going for a few years, and we'll have the same problem you have. We're going to be so successful they can't possibly stop us, right?
Hey, that's what. Excellent.
Okay,
Thanks,
you so
Shel. I
much,
appreciate
everyone.
your time.
Thank
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Have a good weekend, everybody.